Yo, what up? I'm back with another episode of the Football Chai podcast. And today, you know what? I'm gonna do things a little differently today. I'm not gonna cover every single game um, that happened over the weekend across the different leagues because that just becomes too much and it becomes too cluttered. And then I don't end up giving enough time to, to like different topics. So I'm just gonna talk about the stuff that I feel I needs to be covered, and also some like personal stuff related to Barca and United and stuff, just because I support those teams. Um, but yeah, to start with, I'm gonna just do a quick plug. First off, my YouTube channel is live for the podcast. This will probably be on it, so just click the subscribe button or fucking send it to some friends. And yeah, this is where I'm just going to be posting all my stuff. So if you are interested, if you know people who are interested, just send it over to them. Subscribe, you'll be helping me out. It'll be fun. So that's one. Second thing is, this weekend has been fucking insane in terms of just football coverage for me, because it was one of those weekends where, so this couple of websites that I write for, one of the websites is called fansided.com. I've written a whole bunch of stuff, go check it out. But this weekend, I literally Friday night I watched the Roma Milan game, and then I ended the weekend last night watching first the Barca Huesca game, and then after that the Betis Sevilla game. So literally 3 days in a row I've just been watching football non-stop, and it's been pretty crazy and it's been super fun, especially because it's been fun because this is now my job and I love it. So this has been great. But just quick plug again, I wrote 4 pieces over the weekend. One's on about the Roma Milan game. Read the piece if you want, but for sure check the highlights of that game out, because actually, you know what, the highlights don't even do justice to it. So if you can find like a live stream somewhere online, or if it's coming on TV again somewhere, definitely catch that game. And this is one of those matches where you have to watch the entire thing to really understand like the flow and the momentum of the game, because the highlights just won't do it justice, because the game is just like, I wrote about this in the piece. It was just so Italian in its approach. It's two big teams with two good managers, but then again, every Italian manager is a good manager because they're just taught to be tactical from like since they're out the womb. So it was a tactical like battle. It was like the commentator that I was watching the game on kept repeating himself. He kept saying it was like a chess match, and even though he kept repeating himself saying that, and it kind of got like, he kind of overdid it. It's true, like that's exactly what it was. It was just such a strategy oriented match where like the first half, before the game sort of settled into a flow, it was just like a little haphazard. But then like Milan grew into the game beautifully, and I actually honestly love watching Milan now, which is hilarious to say, because first of all, I hate both Milan teams. I just generally hate them. But if I had to choose now, I'd probably choose AC over Inter, because they've got a young side, and I generally like teams that promote young players, that promote from within, and Milan are doing that. And then over and above that, they've got Gattuso, who just bleeds that club, So there's like this romantic sense of like, there's a romantic narrative to that club, and also there's just Gattuso is just such a passionate guy that you gotta like respect him. And what I find really cool about this Milan side is that Gattuso, what he was as a player, was just this, like aggressive, mad dog on the field. He'll rile oppositions up. He'll make the dirty tackles. But Milan are like, they play almost the exact opposite of that. Yeah, there are some like smart players, and like in every team, who make the clever fouls. But Milan play some beautiful football. Even against Napoli last week, they pass the ball really well, 1-2s, and then they'll switch the ball over all the way across to the other side of the field where there's space, and then attack down that side. And In Ricardo Rodriguez and Davide Calabria, they've got two really good attacking fullbacks. They've got Çalhanoğlu on the left, and they've got Suso on the right. Both who are going to cut in. It's just it. I'm excited to see where this Milan side goes because I was looking at their lineup and the way they played. So there's two different factors here. One is the way they played was beautiful, which caught my eye, and this is again we're talking about a Milan side who are playing a Roma side who are more experienced than Milan at the same level because Milan's still got a lot of new players in, and this is this almost the same Roma side minus Kevin Strootman and plus like Javier Pastore, but it's pretty much the same Roma side that got to the semi-finals, almost made it to the final, beat Barcelona, pushed both Napoli and Juve all the way. So this is a strong ass fucking Roma side, and this is a Milan side who played their game for 45 minutes, really dominated, and got the goal, and then they got the goal right before halftime, and then this is why the game got so interesting was because at halftime, when the teams came back out, Eusebio Di Francesco, who's the manager of Roma, again such a smart manager, so clever, willing to take risks, and that's exactly what he did. He took off a defender and brought on El Shaarawy. So they moved from a 3-5-2 to or either a 3-5-2 or a 3-4-3 to a 4-3-3. And as soon as they did that, they dominated that game. They dominated to a point where they should feel like they didn't deserve to lose. But that's why the game is so interesting, because for that second 45 minutes, Roma was so good. They could have been 2-3 goals up. Like they could have scored 2-3 goals, I mean. But then because they were riding on the momentum that they had created for themselves, they left themselves open at the back, which Milan just exploited. And Gattuso, who like for the first 15-20 minutes of the second half looked like he didn't know what to do, did exactly what was right for the moment for the team, because he sort of knew that Milan wouldn't, his team wouldn't be able to wrestle back the momentum of the game. So what he did instead was he made the appropriate substitutions that would allow them to strike back. And throwing Cutrone on to make his formation a 4-4-2 instead of a 4-5-1 changed the game, because Cutrone scored, but it was also like a signal of his intention, which is, listen, you may be pummeling us right now, but we're going to fucking attack and we're going to score. And that's exactly what they did. And it was just a beautiful game to watch. And I loved watching it because it was a Friday night. It was like 1 in the morning here where I was watching it. And it was just a perfect way to start the weekend off. So definitely watch that match if you can. And check out my piece if you want to. But yeah, that's how I started the weekend off. And that was something I wanted to cover, because Serie A is going through a huge renaissance right fucking now. And I, for one, have always been a fan of Serie A. Always, meaning for the past 5-6 years I've been following it quite religiously. And I just think it's time that the league and the Italian teams and the Italian managers get the recognition that they deserve. Obviously, with Ronaldo moving over to Juventus and all the hype, there are going to be more eyes there. But I'm saying if anyone's like a football fan, if they like watching football, you should watch Serie A, not for fucking Juventus and not just the Champions League. Generally, the Serie A, the league itself, between the smaller, quote-unquote smaller teams, there's just a lot you can learn about the game when you watch, and it's just also really entertaining. It's not like the stereotypical, Serie A is defensive. It's not that anymore. It's tactical, which is what's great about it. That's why I love it. So that's what I wanted to start off with, and let's move on to the Premier League. I covered 3 games. One was a City game, one was a Chelsea game, one was the Liverpool game. I'm not going to go into the details of all of that. I'm pretty sure we all watched it, or we watched the highlights and stuff of all these games. But what I am going to cover, and I wrote about it, so if you're interested, just take a look at the articles. I posted on my Facebook. It's on Fansided, it's on my LinkedIn, it's all over the place. But what I do want to talk about is Chelsea and Maurizio Sarri, because what we have in this Chelsea side is, one of my really close friends is a huge Chelsea fan, and he was asking me about Sarri and just generally about. We were talking a lot about Chelsea before the season started, and I was very optimistic about Chelsea's chances, not only because it's Maurizio Sarri and I have this like romance with Napoli and with him and all this stuff. It's more like just because how tactically, like it's all about tactics again. It's another Italian manager coming to the Premier League, implementing his ideas the same way Antonio Conte did, the same way Guardiola did, the same way even Mourinho did back in the day. Let's not go into Mourinho right now. I do want to talk a little bit about Mourinho in a bit, but since we're talking about Sarri, it's these qualities about him that's gonna really make this season interesting. And there was one point that I made in the piece that I wrote about Chelsea, which is Chelsea are going to be an entertaining side to watch no matter what. Because, okay, it was a 2-0 against Bournemouth. It was a great game. In fact, I had a really nice time watching it. But 2-0 on paper doesn't tell the entire story, because this game, in many ways, was like an upgrade in quality of the Chelsea-Newcastle game on both levels, because Chelsea looked more well drilled. They looked smooth. They looked like after every week, like each of the players seems to have gotten what Sarri wants out of it. And also just seeing Jorginho dictate and just dominate in the centre of the park is beautiful to watch. Not just in his passing, it's also about the things that he does when he doesn't have the ball, which is telling, literally like pointing to places where players should go and move to. And I think this is one of the huge reasons why Jorginho moved, and also Sarri wanted Jorginho, is because Jorginho knows what Sarri wants, but more than that, he's got this instinct, at least based on what I can see of the guy and how much ever I've watched of the guy. He seems to have this instinctive quality of leadership on the field. And I know like Hazard's the main focal point, and there's like the Willian and the Pedro and the flashy players that Chelsea have got, but literally Chelsea's season is going to be built on Jorginho and what he can bring to the side. And also just related to all of this, Chelsea can only get better now. And for one, they're playing the Europa League, which means that it is going to be intense, but it's not going to be as intense as if they were in the Champions League. Which also means that there's a very real chance that Chelsea will challenge for the title, because let's think about this very logically, and this is something that I didn't really pay attention to earlier. I was just like after the season they had last year, I was like, nah, Chelsea aren't real contenders. But they are, because Sarri is a manager who's really smart. We've already established that. But there's another thing. This is almost the exact same Chelsea side that won the title 2 years ago and 4 years ago. And and in fact, I'd say this is even a better Chelsea side, because they've got such depth now in Loftus-Cheek coming on, Barkley, who started the season pretty well, but then like he sort of faded away a little bit. They've got fucking Kovacic, Hazard, who's literally at his peak, and it was so nice to watch Hazard, because he reminded me so much of Messi, in that like the way Chelsea were playing, they were doing these beautiful like 1-2s, 3s in like close triangles in like different shapes on, like it's all like geometrical the way they were passing on the field. But then as soon as Hazard would get the ball, he just like glide past players and like three or four different players, and just move the ball upfield so easily. Very, very similar to the way Messi does. Obviously, Messi is just another level, and there's nobody close to Messi. But it was beautiful to see that, and I know there's also something I want to talk about Messi in a bit. But since we're talking about Chelsea, it was just great to see like Hazard playing with this like fire. It's like he wants to fucking do something. And also Marcus Alonso was just so good. he is so good. It baffled me that he didn't go to the World Cup. And it's great to see him in the Spain squad. And I think Chelsea, I don't know, I'm a little all over the place with what I'm saying right now, but the bottom line is Chelsea are definitely going to be up there at the end of the season, whether it's challenging for a Champions League place at the minimum, and at best they're going to be challenging for the title. And it was just a great game against Bournemouth. I love Bournemouth. I love Eddie Howe. I love everything the guy does, the way they play, the spirit that they have. They made a good game out of it also, and they just sort of tired at the end of it. And once Chelsea got the first goal, it was sort of over. But they made a good game out of it, and which is why I said earlier that it was like an upgrade in quality again, compared to the Newcastle game, because Bournemouth sat back, but when they pushed forward well. And I'm just very excited to see where Bournemouth go this season. They've started the season well, which has been a problem for them the last few years. But I don't know, like there's a lot of competitors in the middle of the table for the Europa League. But I don't know, I'm hopeful about Bournemouth, and I'll be just excited to see where they go for the rest of the season. Yeah, and don't really want to spend more time on the Premier League, because the Premier League's like, there's not really many talking points. I do want to talk about Jose Mourinho though. So I wrote this piece about a week ago, sometime basically after the Spurs United game, basically shitting on Mourinho, and I stand by what I wrote in that piece. The summary of it is, I think Mourinho's on the verge of extinction is what the headline was, which is basically what I'm saying is Mourinho's ideas aren't as effective as they used to be, because the game has evolved. Like we saw this happen to Guardiola after he left Barca, or like even towards the end of his time at Barca, and we saw this with Spain. Like these ideas that exist in football that tend to dominate will also tend to fade away, and Guardiola's evolved, which is why because why City looks so good, and he's still got things to work on. Obviously, like everyone's got things to work on, and nobody's perfect. But Mourinho, the problem I have with him is he refuses to believe that his idea isn't as effective anymore, and he's such a stubborn guy, and he makes himself to be out the victim so much of the time, whereas all he's really doing is creating this toxic environment around him and the club and all the players, because what he's doing is, it's all the world against me, and you guys constantly criticize me, and I'm the victim, and I suck, and I'm great, but you guys tell me I'm shit. Not only is that bad, as in for himself, maybe he can handle it, which is why he does it, but when you're creating that sort of environment, obviously it's going to bleed into the club and into the players, and you're going to see this sense of like isolation on one level and then unity on the other level, right? But the problem is with Mourinho and United, he has made himself the victim here, and which is bled into the players, and in a way that's good, because against Burnley they looked really good. It was a very entertaining game, which I haven't really said about United at all since Ferguson left. It was an entertaining game. United dominated for large parts. They could have won it 4-0 if Lukaku had been more clinical up front. But more than that, they looked like they had a fire to their play. Like they had some desire to it, and they really wanted to prove to the world that they were actually Manchester United. And that's good. That's good on one level, but that can't be a long-term strategy. Like that kind of willpower and spirit and nothing else, like no tactics, no tactical innovation, isn't going to last. And that was my problem always with Mourinho. And also, of course, I'm biased in that, like, I was a Barca fan when I am a Barca fan, and Guardiola was there and Mourinho was there. Obviously now it's not coming from that same space. I'm not just shitting on Mourinho because I hate him. There is that to it as well when I get emotional about it, but it's more about just like I feel that Mourinho needs to adapt, and I've been literally talking about this for so long now. There's another piece I wrote ages back. I think it was about a year ago, where I was talking about Mourinho's tactics and how he needs to evolve, and that's the only way United can really challenge. And the thing is, United have gotten by on second place in the Europa League finish and all this stuff only because they're Manchester United. It's literally that they have a lot of money. They've got a lot of top quality players, and they're pulling through. But that's not how they're reactive. They need to be the cause. They need to be the ones who are like shaking things up, and that's what we saw against Burnley, which I was very happy to watch, and I hope that continues. But I stand by what I wrote about Mourinho in that piece earlier, and that's about it. And I'm just hoping that that Mourinho proves me wrong or whatever, I hope that the team evolves, the team adapts, we start to play like fucking Manchester United, the Manchester United that I grew up watching, and the Manchester United that I chose to support or whatever the fuck, and it's just made me a very jaded fan of the club, and that's about it. And I'm just gonna leave it there. I don't want to talk more about this. There's gonna be a lot of I already got quite a bit of flack about talking about Mourinho and stuff, so whatever, just gonna move straight on. I do want to fucking talk about the La Liga because there's a lot going on. I'm not going to spend any time on the Bundesliga actually this week. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about La Liga, which is basically Real and Barca, and then of course Atletico and Valencia. But the thing is, I watched the Barca game last night and Barca fucking crushed. They won 8-2, and it was just so beautiful to watch this Barcelona side play with such freedom in the front, in the final third of the pitch. I haven't seen that since basically Guardiola, which was about 8 years ago. So it was as a fan, it hit all the right spots watching that game and watching the link up play and the goals and all this stuff. And what's really great is, in terms of for the neutral, what's really great is that Real played really well against Leganes too. And I watched the highlights of that match, and Real were dominant as well. But the thing is, and of course they scored 4 goals. Bale and Benzema are scoring quite well. Have scored quite often already so far. I think they scored in all 3 games. Isco didn't even start. Asensio looks very sharp. But the thing about both sides is, defensively, at least Barca's defense has been great from whatever I've seen. That's what they built their success on last year. But the thing is, against Huesca, they were just all over the place, and I think it came down to a little bit of complacency on Barca's part, that they were it's Huesca, they're not going to really threaten us. But Huesca did, and they scored 2 goals, and it was actually very entertaining to watch and you don't see this often in the Premier League. You don't see a smaller team really take the game to a bigger team. You don't. That's why I like Bournemouth so much, because they tend to do this. It tends to lead to a much more open game, more entertaining. There's more goals. There's everything we love about football. That what happens versus a Newcastle or a fucking Benitez, who just pulls all 11 players back and makes the game the most boring thing to watch. And obviously there's good and bad to both sides of strategies, but it was just so great, I guess. It was just very I can't think of the word, but it was just I felt super happy watching the match yesterday, and I was watching it like I was a kid again, pretty much. That's how it made me feel, because Barca. I want to talk a little bit about Barca, because first of all, that attack looks delicious. It looks so good. Dembele looks like a new person altogether. He looks like he's understood the Barca style of play, what the manager wants from him. But what's even bigger than this is he looks confident. Like, he looked very uncertain at times last season when he was coming on, and he obviously had injury troubles, and he had a very like stop-start um, season last year. But here now like so far this season he's already got 2 goals. He looks very sharp, and he looks like aggressive on the ball, and what I really like about what Valverde is telling him to do is he's not telling Dembele to not do any of his skills. Like, Dembele still does these turns, these Cruyff turns, the step overs, but he does it at the right moments. And his release for the Jordi Alba pass, which led to the second goal, was beautiful. It was the perfectly timed pass, and it was something that Dembele probably wouldn't have been able to do last season. So that was just great to see. And then, of course, Coutinho just looks next level. He looks like he was just born for Barca, and just the way he shifts the ball away from defenders. And you know what? Like, watching this match yesterday, it made me feel as if like there's this new sense of like youth and energy to this Barca side that you didn't really see much last season. Obviously, the big factor is Iniesta's gone, and Coutinho's taken Iniesta's place. I'm not saying that's a better thing. I'm saying it was the right thing because it was needed for the team. Iniesta is Iniesta. He's a legend for a reason, but he's also like 32, 33, and it was like he isn't getting any younger, and he probably wouldn't have been able to provide the kind of energy that we're seeing in Barca now. He'd obviously do tons of other stuff, and this isn't me shitting on Iniesta. I love Iniesta, but I think it was the right time for him to leave, and it was the right time for the team to rebuild, and they have done so really well. Like, Arthur coming on looks so good. He looks exactly like Xavi, and a mix of Xavi and Sergio Busquets. Rakitic, I feel like he's the most underrated player in all of football. Like, obviously Modric is getting all the plaudits for a reason, but I don't know if I don't want to say one is better than the other. I'm never going to admit that Modric is better than Rakitic. All I'm saying is Rakitic deserves more recognition just by people in general, because the guy is, again, he's very much like Jorginho, but he's used in a different way at Barca. Him and Busquets sort of like sit, which allows Coutinho to do his thing, and then Dembele and the other three can all link up really well. But Rakitic also, his passing range is just phenomenal. He's so consistent at like doing those crossfield passes, and again this feature of his game, which is the long passing that he has, combined with the perfectly timed runs that he makes into the box. Like, he scored in the Champions League final when we won the triple in 2015 for a reason, and he won 3 Champions League, 3 Europa Leagues in a row, captaining Sevilla for a reason, and that was what Barca signed him for. And he scored a fucking blinder of a goal. You have to check it out. I don't care if you hate Barca, I don't care what the fuck is going on, just you have to watch that goal. That goal was just so beautiful, like the link-up play, everything, and the finish was just phenomenal. And I just felt so happy that Rakitic was the one who got it, because he deserves credit for his game. And there's a section of Barca supporters who talk about Rakitic not being a Barca DNA or whatever, and I think that's bullshit. Like, Rakitic is pivotal to this side, and it's just going to be a very interesting league overall to watch. And I know it's 30 minutes in. I have to talk about Messi, because the guy is just the best. That's it. There's nothing. There is no argument against that anymore. Like, he is just so good. It's you can barely describe it in words. And again, with all the UEFA Player of the Year talk, the Ballon d'Or, the Golden Ball, whatever the fuck it is, Messi's name hasn't been in in the reckoning at all, which baffles me. I understand about the UEFA Player of the Year thing because, it's more of a Champions League thing than anything else. But what the fuck? If you're talking about the best player in the world based on the best season, and I don't want this to go into a rant because I've talked about this way too many times, I'm just going to leave it at this. First of all, if there's ever any doubts about Messi, it just means that you haven't watched enough of him. You've only watched him at the World Cup, or you've only watched him with Argentina. That's not enough. That just isn't enough when you're judging the guy, because there's so much more to his game that he does that just you cannot get when you're watching 3 games of him. You have to watch him when he's at his flowing best, and he was that against Huesca. He was so good. His goal, first of all, was just a classic Messi. Like, I've gotten so used to it that I'm almost like, just another Messi goal. There's that. But there was also, like, his passing, his consistent, like, loops from the right side of the field with his left foot over everyone into Jordi Alba's feet. He does that so well. And again, it's so simple. Like, everything Messi does is simple. It's the easiest thing in the game. He just does it 100,000 times better than anyone ever could. That's it. He does the simple things so well. That's why he doesn't get like the. I mean, he does, obviously. He does get a lot of press, which is why people are pissed off about it. But there's a reason for that, and it's just he's not a flashy player, but that's why he's the best. He is so good at what he does. His goal was great. His second goal was also great. Very simple finish. Great ball from Coutinho. He set up Rakitic with a phenomenal lob, and he gave up his hat-trick so that Suarez could go score his second goal. What does that say about the guy? The guy is just, there's no words to describe him. He is the best. And I was watching that game, and I watched the previous games that Barca had done, that have had so far this season, and he looks sharp. He looks fit. He looks, again, aggressive. He looks like he wants to grab this season by the throat and fucking murder it. And that's what I want to see, and that's what I want to I love seeing, because the world will just never get a player like him ever again. Ever. I can guarantee that. At least not in my lifetime. And we just need to be happy that we're going to see a player like him playing at his peak, for another season. And that's just going to be great. So I'm super excited to watch that. I'm going to end it with that, because I got like super into that like little bit of that little monologue there. Anyway, great weekend though. Great weekend overall. I think in terms of football entertainment, Real look good. Every league has started off really well. We're not even going to talk about Liga right now, the French league, because I just don't think there's a point to it. But yeah, every league pretty much has started off with a banger, and we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. But as of now, I'm just gonna be keeping my eye out a lot on Serie A this season, but then also, of course, on Barca, Real, and how that pans out, because Atletico and Valencia have started slowly, which means it could very much be a 2-horse race for the title, to a point where Barca and Real are just miles above everyone else, because they both look like completely rejuvenated for this season. So that's going to be fun. In the meantime, the Premier League is the Premier League. It's always going to be entertaining to watch. Thank you for listening if you made it this far. This is going to be, again, like I'm going to try and do this at least once a week, but last week I couldn't because I just had too much shit to do, and I didn't really have something that I really cared about that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, just stay tuned. Like I said earlier, just subscribe, if you're interested in this kind of content, share it with people. I'll be posting soon. Thanks for listening. Peace.